The great hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with tension. 12 different alien species sat in their grand seats, their eyes fixed on the small human delegation standing in the center. Ambassador Lisa Grant stood straight and tall, her face calm despite knowing what was coming. Behind her, Commander Jake Morrison kept his hand near his weapon, not because he planned to fight, but because old habits die hard. The Zephyrian counselor rose from his crystalline throne. His blue skin shimmered as he spoke in a voice that echoed through the vast chamber. "We have made our decision about the human problem," he announced. The words hit the air like stones dropping into still water. Lisa felt her heart sink, but she kept her expression neutral. She had been Earth's voice in this council for 3 years. She had seen the growing frustration among the alien species. Every time humans did something they considered wrong or dangerous. Every trade dispute, every territorial disagreement, every time humans solved problems in ways the aliens found uncomfortable. "The humans will leave," the Zephyrian continued. "All human colonies beyond your home system must be evacuated within 1 standard year. All trade agreements are ended. All diplomatic relations are finished. You will return to your soul system and stay there." Commander Morrison stepped forward. "Counselor, you're talking about moving 2 billion people. That's the largest evacuation in galactic history." The Montari representative, a tall creature with 4 arms and skin like polished metal, spoke next. "The decision is final. Humans are too unpredictable, too aggressive, too willing to break established rules when it suits them." Lisa remembered the incidents they meant. Last year, human traders had ignored quarantine protocols to deliver medical supplies to a plague-stricken world. The month before that, Captain Ryan Brooks had violated 3 different space traffic laws to rescue survivors from a pirate attack. The humans had saved lives both times, but they had broken rules to do it. "We follow galactic law," Lisa said. Quietly, "When it suits you," the Altarian counselor replied. His reptilian features showed disgust. "Your species cannot be trusted to maintain order. You solve everything with violence or by ignoring proper procedures." Jake Morrison wanted to argue, but Lisa raised her hand slightly. She knew this fight was already lost. The vote had been taken before they even entered the chamber. She could see it in their faces, in the way they avoided looking directly at the human delegation. The vote was 11-1, the Zephyrian announced. Only the Kepler species chose not to participate. Lisa looked toward the Kepler representative, a being so alien that humans still struggled to understand their basic anatomy. The Kepler had never said much in council meetings, but they had never voted against humanity either. Today, they remained silent, their strange form shifting colors slowly. "We understand," Lisa said finally. "We'll begin the evacuation immediately." The council session ended without ceremony. No formal farewells, no acknowledgement of the years humans had contributed to galactic trade and exploration. The aliens simply filed out, already talking among themselves about how peaceful things would be once the humans were gone. Captain Ryan Brooks received the news while commanding a supply run to New Austin, a human colony in the Vega system. The planet had been home to 50,000 colonists who had spent 30 years turning a barren rock into fertile farmland. Now they had to leave it all behind. "Pack only what you can carry," Ryan told the colonial governor over the communication. "Link, we have 11 months to move everyone back to Sol space. That means civilian ships, military vessels, cargo haulers, everything that can carry people." The evacuation began within days. Human ships from across the galaxy converged on the 47 worlds that would have to be abandoned. Some colonies had been established for generations. Children had been born on these worlds who had never seen Earth. Now they all had to go home to a place many had never been. Dr. Amy Carter supervised the evacuation of the research station on Kepler 442b. Her team had been studying the planet's unique ecosystem for 8 years. They had made discoveries that could have revolutionized agriculture across the galaxy. All of that work would be left behind. "It's not fair," her assistant, Dr. Danny Wright, said as they packed their equipment. "We've done nothing but help. We've shared our medical knowledge, our technology, our trade routes. And this is how they repay us." Amy looked out at the alien landscape one last time. The double sunset painted the sky in colors that Earth's single sun could never create. "They're afraid of us, Danny. They don't understand us, so they fear us." What are they afraid of? That we might actually solve their problems? Maybe. Or maybe they're afraid that we'll create new problems they can't handle. The evacuation continued. For months, human ships worked around the clock, moving families, equipment, livestock, entire communities. Some aliens watched the process with satisfaction. Others seemed uncomfortable with what they had voted for, but none offered to help. The hardest evacuations were the mixed colonies, where humans had lived alongside alien settlers. These communities had to be broken apart, with each species returning to their own space. Friendships that had lasted decades were severed by political decisions made in distant council chambers. Commander Morrison oversaw the final evacuation from New Geneva, humanity's largest colony outside Sol Space. The planet had been home to nearly 1 million humans and had served as the regional capital for human space. As the last transport ship lifted off, Morrison looked down at the cities they were leaving behind. "They'll regret this," he said to his aide. "Someday they'll need us, and we won't be there." His aide, Lieutenant Paul Davis, was young and angry. "Maybe we should make them regret it sooner." Morrison shook his head. "That's exactly the kind of thinking that got us exiled in the first place. We'll leave peacefully, but we'll remember." As the final month approached, the galaxy prepared for humanity's departure. The Council commissioned the construction of a massive energy barrier around the entire Sol system. The barrier would be powered by exotic matter generators placed at strategic points around the system's edge. Once activated, nothing would be able to enter or leave Sol space. The Zephyrian engineers who designed the barrier were proud of their work. It was, they claimed, absolutely impenetrable. No known technology could breach it from either side. Humanity would be permanently contained. The last human ship to cross the boundary was the diplomatic vessel carrying Ambassador Grant herself. As her ship approached the barrier coordinates, she sent a final message to the Galactic Council. "You think you know what humans are capable of," she transmitted. "You've seen us adapt to your worlds, learn your languages, follow your laws. But you've never seen what we become when we have no choice but to rely on ourselves. You've made a mistake today. You won't realize it for years, maybe decades, but you've made a terrible mistake." The energy barrier activated as her ship passed the final checkpoint. A shimmering wall of force surrounded the Sol system, cutting humanity off from the rest of the galaxy completely. On the other side, the aliens celebrated their success. They had solved the human problem forever. In the months that followed, galactic trade resumed its normal patterns. Disputes were settled through proper diplomatic channels. Wars were fought according to established rules. Everything was orderly, predictable, and peaceful. The galaxy had finally achieved the stability it had always wanted. They had no idea what they had just unleashed. 50 years had passed since the Great Barrier went up around Sol system. In the galaxy beyond, the alien civilizations enjoyed what they called their golden age. Trade flowed smoothly between worlds. Conflicts were solved through careful negotiation. Technology advanced at a steady, predictable pace that satisfied everyone. The Zephyrians built new crystal cities on 12 different worlds. The Altarians expanded their merchant empire, to cover half the galaxy. The Montari perfected their art of diplomacy until war became almost unknown. Everything was exactly as the Galactic Council had planned. Behind the barrier, humanity faced a very different reality. The first 10 years were brutal. 2 billion people crammed into one solar system meant shortages of everything. Food ran out. On Mars within 6 months, the orbital stations around Jupiter could barely support their populations. Earth itself struggled to feed the returning colonists, who had known nothing but imported alien food for decades. Dr. Amy Carter, now director of the Seoul Agricultural Project, stood in what used to be the Sahara Desert, where sand dunes once stretched. To the horizon, massive greenhouse domes now covered the landscape. Inside each dome, genetically modified crops grew in soil that had been transformed through techniques no alien species had ever imagined. The wheat is ready for harvest, her assistant Maria Lopez reported. Maria had been just a student when the exile began. Now she was one of humanity's leading food scientists. This batch should feed the Luna colonies for 3 months. Amy nodded, watching the automated harvesters work through the dome's transparent walls. How are the ocean farms doing? Better than expected. The kelp forests are producing protein at twice the rate we calculated. Dr. Wright thinks we can start the deep ocean projects next year. Amy smiled for the first time in weeks. They were winning the fight against starvation, but it had cost them. Nearly 50,000 people had died in the early years before the food systems came online. Every human alive remembered those dark times when they ate protein paste and recycled water that tasted like metal dot in the asteroid belt. Commander Nicole Foster supervised the construction of something the galaxy had never seen. Hidden inside hollowed-out asteroids, humanity was building a new kind of space fleet. The ships taking shape in these secret shipyards looked nothing like the vessels that had evacuated the colonies 50 years ago. The hull plating is ready, Engineer Paul Davis reported. Paul had aged from a young lieutenant into a grizzled veteran during the exile years. The new alloy tests show it can reshape itself at the molecular level. If we take damage, the ship can literally heal itself. Nicole walked along the hull of the prototype vessel. The metal felt warm under her touch, almost alive. What about the propulsion system? That's where it gets interesting. Paul led her to the engine bay. Dr. Wright's team cracked the quantum fold equations last month. This ship won't just be faster than alien vessels. It'll be able to appear and disappear almost instantly. The ship they were building was called the Defiance. It would be the first of its kind, but not the last. In asteroid bases throughout the outer system, similar vessels were taking shape. Each one incorporated technology that pushed beyond anything the exiled humans had possessed 50 years ago. Dr. Danny Wright worked in a laboratory buried deep inside Ceres, the largest asteroid. In the belt had been hollowed out and converted into humanity's primary research facility. Danny looked older than his 60 years, his hair white from decades of stress and long hours. But his eyes still held the fire that had driven him since the day they left Kepler 442b. "Show me the test results," he said to his team. Dr. Helen Baker, his lead physicist, activated a holographic display. A micro-black hole generator is stable. We can create and control singularities no larger than an atom, but with enough energy output to power a city. Weapon applications? Devastating? A single shot could crack a moon, but the real breakthrough is the power source. We can run our new ships indefinitely without refueling. Danny studied the data. The technology they were developing didn't just match alien capabilities. It surpassed them in ways that made him slightly afraid of what humanity was becoming. Any word from the Defense Corps? General Baker wants to see the combat applications. Next week. Chris Baker had been a young officer when the exile began. Now he was the supreme commander of something that hadn't existed 50 years ago, a truly unified human military. Every person in Sol system, from children to elderly, received combat training, not because humans loved war, but because they understood survival. Chris stood in the training facility on Titan, watching recruits practice with weapons that fired controlled gravity pulses. The soldiers moved with a precision that would have impressed the galaxy's finest military units. But these weren't professional soldiers. They were farmers, engineers, teachers, and shopkeepers who had learned to fight because they had no choice. "How many active personnel do we have?" he asked his aide, Captain Kate Miller. "Every human over the age of 16 is combat certified. Total active military, 400 million. Reserve forces, 800 million. Full population mobilization capability, complete." Chris nodded grimly. They had turned Sol System into the galaxy's most heavily defended fortress, and the aliens didn't even know it. "What about the new equipment?" "The adaptive armor is in full production. Personal shields that can stop anything short of a direct hit from a battleship. Weapons that can punch through alien hull plating like paper. Communication systems that work faster than light." Behind the barrier, humanity had done more than just survive. They had evolved. The transformation wasn't just military. Human society itself had changed. The old divisions between nations had disappeared during the crisis years. Earth no longer had separate countries. Mars wasn't divided into corporate territories. Every human settlement from Mercury to the outer planets operated as part of a single, unified civilization. Commander Tony Rodriguez, grandson of one of the original evacuees, piloted a reconnaissance drone along the inner edge of the barrier. The energy wall still hummed with power after 50 years, just as impenetrable as the day it was activated. But Tony and his team had been studying it for decades. "Can we get through it?" his navigator, Roy Townsend, asked. "When we're ready," Tony replied. "Dr. Wright thinks the quantum fold drives in phase through the barrier without disrupting it. The aliens will never know we're gone until we want them to know." "And when will we want them to know?" Tony checked his instruments. Outside the barrier, space looked empty and peaceful. The galaxy beyond had no idea what was waiting just out of sight. "When they need us. And they will need us. Peaceful civilizations always do, eventually." In the deepest laboratories of the Sol System, scientists worked on projects that would have terrified the Galactic Council. Not weapons of mass destruction, but tools of protection and survival that were far more dangerous than any alien technology. Humanity hadn't just adapted to exile. They had transcended it. The barrier that was meant to contain them had become their cocoon. And inside that cocoon, something new was emerging. Something that would make the humans who had been exiled 50 years ago look like children playing with toys. The galaxy enjoyed its golden age of peace, never knowing that their greatest protection and their worst nightmare were growing stronger. Just beyond the wall they had built to keep the humans away. Time was running out for their peaceful existence, though they didn't know it yet. Change was coming to the galaxy, and it would arrive wearing a human face. A first warning came from the edge of the galaxy. A deep space monitoring station in Zephyrian territory went silent without explanation. The technicians assumed it was a equipment failure. Space was vast and lonely, and machines broke down all the time. The second warning came 3 days later. An entire Altarian merchant convoy disappeared between star systems. 23 ships carrying valuable trade goods simply vanished. Search and rescue teams found nothing except empty space where the convoy should have been. High Counselor Vex of the Mantari received the reports in his crystal palace on the homeworld. The four-armed diplomat had spent decades perfecting the art of peaceful negotiation. He had never seen a problem that couldn't be solved through careful discussion and compromise. "Pirates?" He asked his aide. No debris, no distress signals, no demands for ransom. The ships just stopped existing. Vex felt the first cold touch of fear in his long life. In 50 years of galactic peace, nothing like this had ever happened. Send investigative teams to both locations and contact the other council members. We may need an emergency session. The emergency session was called 2 weeks later. After the Devourers revealed themselves, they emerged from dark space simultaneously across 17 different sectors. The alien machines were unlike anything the galaxy had ever encountered. Each one was the size of a small moon, covered in moving parts that constantly shifted and reconfigured themselves. They moved through space without visible propulsion, appearing and disappearing at will. The Zephyrian homeworld of Crystalla was the first major target. 12 billion inhabitants lived on the beautiful planet with its cities of living crystal and floating gardens. The Devourers arrived without warning, peering in orbit like a dark cloud blotting out the sun. Admiral Vex of the Zephyrian Defense Fleet ordered his ships to intercept the intruders. 150 vessels, the pride of Zephyrian engineering, moved to engage the unknown enemy. The battle lasted exactly 17 minutes. The Devourers didn't fight in any recognizable way. They simply absorbed the attacking ships, pulling them apart at the molecular level and incorporating the materials into their own structures. The crews were consumed along with their vessels, their life energy converted into power for the machine entities. Within 6 hours, Crystalla was gone. The beautiful planet had been stripped down to its metallic core, its entire population and ecosystem converted into raw materials for more Devourers. Where a thriving world had existed, only a bare rock remained in space. The news reached the Galactic Council as similar attacks began across the galaxy. The Altarian trading empire found its commercial routes under assault by machine fleets that moved faster than any known technology. The Chronon military, considered the finest warriors in the galaxy, engaged the Devourers at the Battle of Sigma Prime and watched their entire armada disappear into the enemy machines. Counselor Thane of the Altarians stood before the emergency assembly, his reptilian features pale with shock. We've lost contact with 47 worlds in the past week. The Devourers are consuming everything in their path. Our fleets can't even slow them down. The Montari counselor raised one of his 4 arms. What do these machines want? Have they made any demands? They don't communicate. They just consume. Our xenobiologists think there's some kind of automated system designed to harvest matter and energy. They might be older than our civilizations. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy's situation grew desperate. The Devourers moved with coordinated precision that suggested a vast intelligence controlling them. They struck at military targets, industrial centers, and population centers with equal efficiency. No defense seemed capable of stopping them. The Chronon general, Sam Corex, led the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history to the Battle of Centauri Gate. 300,000 ships from 12 different species converged on the strategic choke point where the Devourers had established a forward base. The battle was broadcast live across the galaxy, with billions watching their combined forces engage the machine enemy. The entire fleet was destroyed in 6 hours. The Devourers didn't just defeat the Galactic Armada, they consumed it completely, turning the ships and crews into more of their own kind. The defeat was so total that many species began discussing surrender, though they had no idea if the machines would even acknowledge such a gesture. In his private chambers, Counselor Thane made the suggestion that would have been unthinkable just months earlier. We need to contact the humans. The Zephyrian counselor, one of the few original members still alive after his homeworld's destruction, stared at Thane in horror. The humans? They're quarantined for good reason. They're dangerous and unpredictable. More dangerous than extinction. Thane gestured toward the tactical displays, showing red zones spreading across the galaxy map. We've lost 30% of our territory in 2 months. At this rate, we'll all be dead within a year. The debate raged for days, while more worlds fell to the Devourers. Some council members preferred facing extinction rather than admitting they had been wrong about humanity. Others argued that humans were too primitive to help against such an advanced enemy. Finally, with the Devourer fleets approaching the council homeworld itself, the vote was taken. 7 species voted to contact the humans. 3 voted against. 2 had already been consumed by the machines. The message was sent to Sol System through the emergency communication array built into the barrier itself. It was simple and desperate. We were wrong. Help us, and all past grievances will be forgiven. Deep in Sol System, Admiral Lisa Grant received the transmission aboard the command station orbiting Earth. The elderly woman had spent 50 years preparing for this moment, though she had hoped it would never come. Around her, the most advanced military command center in human history hummed with activity. The barrier is still active, her aide reported. They want our help, but they haven't lowered the walls yet. Lisa studied the galactic situation reports. That had accompanied the message. The Devourers were even more dangerous than humanity's worst projections. In 50 years of isolation, human scientists had theorized about various threats the galaxy might face. These machine entities were worse than their darkest nightmares. Send a reply, she ordered. Tell them we'll help, but the barrier comes down first. All of it. They wanted us contained. Now they need us free. The response came within hours. The Council agreed to deactivate the entire barrier system. The exotic matter generators that had imprisoned humanity for 5 decades were shut down one by one, until the energy wall surrounding Sol System finally flickered and died. Admiral Tony Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the Defiance as the barrier fell. Behind him, the human fleet prepared to emerge from their 50-year cocoon. Ships that had been built in secret, weapons that had never been tested in real combat, technology that surpassed anything the galaxy had ever seen. All ships report ready, his navigator Roy Thompson announced. Tony nodded grimly. The galaxy was about to discover what humanity had become during their exile. Whether that would be salvation or something else entirely remained to be seen. Signal. The fleet, he ordered. It's time to show them what 50 years of human evolution looks like. The soul barrier had fallen. Humanity was free, and the galaxy was about to change forever. The human fleet emerged from Sol System, like ghosts materializing from another dimension. The alien observers watching from the Council homeworld had expected to see familiar human ship designs, maybe upgraded versions of the vessels they remembered from 50 years ago. What they saw instead made them question everything they thought they knew about technology. The ships seemed to phase in and out of reality as they moved. Their hulls gleamed with energy patterns that hurt to look at directly. Some vessels appeared to exist in multiple locations at once, creating afterimages that confused alien sensors. Leading the fleet was the flagship Defiance, commanded by Admiral Tony Rodriguez, grandson of one of the original exiles. Commander Kate Miller piloted her fighter squadron through impossible maneuvers that defied the basic laws of physics. Her ships folded space around themselves, appearing behind enemy positions before the Devourers could react. The machine entities, programmed to anticipate conventional tactics, found themselves facing opponents who refused to follow any predictable pattern. The first major engagement took place in the ruins of the Kepler system. The strange aliens who had abstained from the vote to exile humanity had been completely consumed 3 days earlier. Their homeworld was nothing but a metal skeleton floating in space, picked clean by the Devourer machines. Admiral Rodriguez deployed his forces using strategies that would have been impossible with conventional technology. Human ships didn't just move through space, they manipulated it. They created gravity wells to trap enemy units, folded space-time to avoid attacks, and used quantum interference to disrupt Devour communications. Dr. Lara Hayes worked frantically aboard the research vessel Determination as the battle raged around her. The elderly scientist had spent decades studying theoretical physics behind the soul barrier. Now she was putting her theories to the ultimate test. "I think I've found their weakness," she announced over the communication system. "The Devourers operate using a collective consciousness transmitted through subspace frequencies. They're all connected to a central intelligence. Captain Roy Thompson coordinated the attack from his command ship. How do we use that against them? Our quantum fold drives generate interference patterns in subspace. If we can tune them to the right frequency, we can disrupt their network. Communications. Cut them off from their central mind." The breakthrough came when Roy's ships began working together as massive interference generators. Instead of attacking the Devourers directly, they surrounded the machine fleets and created overlapping quantum fields. The effect was immediate and devastating. Individual Devourer units began to shut down as their connection to the collective was severed. Without central coordination, they reverted to basic programming and stopped their coordinated attacks. Some simply drifted in space, powerless. Others began attacking each other, their damaged programming unable to distinguish friend from foe. News of the human victory spread quickly through what remained of the galaxy. The species that had voted to exile humanity 50 years ago watched in amazement as human forces systematically liberated conquered systems. The technology gap was so vast that it seemed like magic to alien observers. General Sam Parker led the assault on the Devourer production facility deep in the galaxy's core. The massive construct was the size of a small solar system, a factory that had been converting stellar matter into more machine units for centuries. Intelligence reports suggested it was the source of the entire Devourer fleet, the battle for. The core facility lasted 18 hours. Human forces had to fight their way through defenses that had been built over millennia. The Devourers threw everything they had at the attacking humans, including prototype units that had never been deployed before. Commander Nicole Foster's heavy assault ships punched through the outer defenses using weapons powered by controlled micro-black holes. Each shot could crack a moon, but the facility's shields absorbed the energy and redirected it back at the attackers. The humans adapted by using their quantum fold technology to redirect the reflected energy into empty space. Inside the facility, engineer Beth Collins led a team of specialists through corridors filled with alien machinery beyond imagination. The Devourer factory was part computer, part living organism, and part something that human science had no name for. It had been growing and evolving for longer than human civilization had existed. The central processing core is 3 levels. Down, Beth reported as her team fought through mechanical defenders. If we can get to it, I can introduce a cascade virus into their network. The virus Beth had developed was based on human quantum computing principles that the Devourers had never encountered. It would turn their own collective consciousness against them, creating feedback loops that would destroy their ability to coordinate or even think coherently. Captain Helen Baker provided cover as Beth's team reached the central core. The processing chamber was vast, filled with crystalline structures that pulsed with alien intelligence. In the center, a single terminal connected to the entire Devourer network across the galaxy. Beth worked quickly, her fingers flying over controls that were designed for completely different beings. She had to improvise adaptations on the spot, creating interface connections that had never been tested. One mistake would alert the Devourers to what she was doing and trigger security systems that could kill her team instantly. "Upload complete," she announced. "The virus is in their system." The effect was immediate and total. Across the galaxy, every Devourer unit suddenly stopped functioning. The cascade virus spread through their network faster than light, destroying the collective consciousness that had guided them for millennia. In a matter of hours, the greatest threat the galaxy had ever faced simply ceased to exist. Admiral Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the Defiance as reports poured in from across human space. Every Devourer facility had gone dark. Every machine unit had shut down. The threat that had nearly destroyed galactic civilization was ended, but victory came with a terrible price. As human forces surveyed the devastated galaxy, they found horrors beyond imagination. Entire species had been driven to extinction. Worlds that had hosted billions of inhabitants were now lifeless rocks. The galaxy's population had been reduced by more than half. The surviving members of the Galactic Council gathered in a temporary chamber on one of the few worlds that had escaped destruction. They faced a humanity they no longer recognized. These were not the chaotic, unpredictable beings they had exiled 50 years ago. They had become something far more capable and far more dangerous. Ambassador Lisa Grant, now ancient but still sharp, addressed the reformed council. Her words carried the weight of 50 years of isolation and transformation. The chamber was silent as she spoke, every alien representative hanging on her words. "You banished us because you thought we were dangerous," she said, her voice calm, but filled with authority. "You were right to be afraid, but not for the reasons you thought. We weren't dangerous because we were chaotic. We were dangerous because when you push humans far enough, when you force us to evolve or die, we don't just survive. We transcend." The council members looked at each other nervously. The old power structure was gone, destroyed along with most of their civilizations. What remained of the galaxy needed protection, and humanity was the only force capable of providing it. "We don't want to rule you," Lisa continued. "We learned 50 years ago that ruling others only creates problems. But we will protect you. We will stand guard against threats you cannot imagine, because that's what humans do. We protect what we care about." The galaxy had learned a hard lesson about the price of exile and the power of human determination. They had banished humanity to achieve peace, only to discover that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is force the humans to become better than you ever imagined possible.